I just wanted to speak, but my wife really wanted me to make one of these prezzies because I used to use these because they look nice. But I'm just worried you guys might get super distracted. Don't get distracted. Focus. So, I was asked by Justino to speak. He cornered me in the parking lot, and I said, sure, because he had a knife, and what are you going to do, He's convincing. But it was good timing because I talk a lot about stuff in a certain realm. Addiction, like he said, sexuality, stuff that I thought I'd never talk about publicly and now exclusively talk about publicly all day. But there's something that I really wanted to explain as best as I can. And the problem is that I keep on explaining it. And the more I explain it, the more it kind of spirals in different directions. And so I hope I can represent what I'm trying to express sufficiently today. But it's essentially the need to embrace and understand your limitations so that you can get past them. And I want to talk about specific limitations, but this applies to kind of every aspect of our life, if you can imagine. And the reason is this. I'm very curious about what just happened. Oh, you want that out of the way? Am I that skinny? Anything, okay. So, I'm in the currency of helping people to identify what it is that they actually want and how to remove anything that's in the way between them and that thing. And those two basic skill sets are lost on most of us. To identify what you want in life is actually pretty hard in any real sense of clarity. Most of us have a vague sense of wanting to be happier, but have no way of expressing what that means or what that looks like from day to day. Okay, what if you were happy? How are you eating breakfast? What are you eating? What kind of conversations are you having? How much time in that day do you spend alone? How much time do you spend with other people, etc.? But in this, I also talk to a lot of people. Mike is just struggling today. You all right? Am I making you nervous? What's going on? He's hustling, yeah. Give it up for Mike's hustle, everybody. You get it up. One of the issues that people have is they think that they are the way they are and they have to be that way forever. So I just started a parents boot camp, which there's some people in here who are in that. And the reason I did that is because I talk to parents and they're like, do you guys talk to your kids about sex? Do you guys talk to your kids about deep things? And a lot of them say no. And I say, why? And they say, because it's hard. And it's like, okay. And then it's like, what else? If it's hard, it doesn't have to stay hard. You can change. You can build rapport with your kids. It's just a matter of identifying, okay, presently, this is our dynamic and this is how we're stuck, but we don't have to be. We can break through that if I can identify why I'm stuck. What particularly emotionally am I feeling and how do I break past that? Does this make sense? So, because for me, I grew up not talking about anything with my family. And so I just had to figure everything out by making the worst possible decisions and then learning from the horror that I inflicted upon my environment, which is probably the worst way to learn, right? It's not very efficient. And I just, now that the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction, and now all I do is live in this state of perpetual honesty, I can't imagine why anybody would live stuck in being afraid to talk about real stuff or being afraid to get past their limitations. Do you guys know what I'm saying? I've been saying this so much. This past week, I recorded a podcast on this, and then I gave a talk to the parent boot camp on something similar. So I just don't want to butcher this, because if you guys can understand this is extremely liberating. Okay, so I'm going to get into the actual content instead of just talking randomly about whatever I'm talking about. Look at this fancy. Look at this. That's fancy, right? It's free software, everybody. Free. So the first thing is, why is this like a thing? My origin story. This all started actually especially, it kicked into high gear. My appreciation for my limitations came in Costa Rica. We went to Costa Rica for 2 months. No idea why we chose Costa Rica. We actually wanted to go somewhere else, but I just felt like we had to go. And my wife was kind enough to just follow my impulse. We ended up going there. And I was like, I challenged myself to take a break. Because I suck at not doing stuff, at just sitting around. Because I'm always like, we could be doing something. Even on Saturdays, it's like, let's go out. And my kids just want to sit and not do anything, you know? So I challenged myself to take a break. Okay, so here was the goal. Don't work. Anybody have issues with that as well? Like they have, I know you, Jared. I got you. Anybody? Yeah. Work. It's not that you like work. It's just that you know what's on the other side of taking a break, which is extra work. Right? It's the carrot on the stick, but it's like a negative carrot. And it's behind you and it's chasing you. I don't know. Give attention to my kids. Really give them my undivided attention, because I do prioritize that. But I also sometimes have to work, so I have to pry them off my leg and go back to work. But I just want to have fun all day. And that's not easy, for me. And to relax, that's not easy for me either. And my dad actually flew down and spent time with us and to hang out with my dad. And AKA that was a disaster. I had a meltdown. This was all I had to do. Look at this. This is what's called a vacation. Okay? And I completely lost my stuff. I was going through this existential crisis where I was like, I failed. We shouldn't have come to Costa Rica. My kids hate it. I'm the worst dad. I don't know. We picked the wrong house. They don't like the pool, all this stuff. And I was just in my head dying, rotting, okay? And this is all I had to do. And then after I started to feel all these deep emotions, I was like, what is going on? All I have to do is sit and enjoy myself, and I'm not able to do that. There's something wrong here. So then I realized, wow, this is a limitation that I'm facing. And this is the first thing that I wanted to convey, is that your limitations, if you let them, are presenting themselves to you all the time in the form of discomfort. And there's many different ways that this can arise, this feeling of discomfort. And we think that this is a bad thing. Especially we're in a culture all about comfort, yeah? Everything is about comfort. So we like to avoid comfort or like to avoid discomfort rather than understanding, why am I uncomfortable? Because High Noon has revised our mission to helping people to be comfortable in their own skin, so they stop wanting to escape themselves. Because this is the heart of addiction, is that you're dealing with uncomfortable emotions and you want to escape them. And the most effective way is through porn, through drugs, through whatever, right? It's just a form of escapism. But if you don't want to escape your life, then you don't have to, and then you don't have to be addicted. That's what it kind of boils down to. And so, here's what I came up with. I don't know if you can see that. A strong desire to challenge myself. So after I started feeling like this array of weird emotions that arose just from me sitting and doing nothing for a couple days, I had this feeling like I want to challenge myself. And here's the weird thing, is that most of the time when we challenge ourselves, it's to get a specific result. You go on a diet to lose weight, right? You sign up for some sort of challenge to get a certain result. But I just wanted to embrace being challenged. Do you guys know what I'm saying? Just being in this state of feeling stuck and then learning what's going on. What are the mechanics of me feeling stuck right now? And I don't know where that came from, but it became a very strong urge, a desire that I wanted to experience feeling stuck and getting comfortable with understanding that so that I could move past it in a healthy way. And so this is what I did. I created a year-long bunch of goals. There's probably 10 goals. And I broke those down into, because not advisable. We also do a lot of goal setting. And if you set a year-long goal, you're basically saying that you'd love to have something happen, but there's no way, a year-long goal is almost impossible to achieve, just as this big thing, unless you have some way of getting there. So I had these things that I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't going to do them just by wanting them to do it and just hoping I could keep momentum all year. So instead, I broke it into 12 21-day conditions. This was a game changer. Anybody ever do conditions? I hope so. But I realized 40-day conditions are kind of too long. They're kind of exhausting. Halfway through, you're kind of like, do I really want this? Because I kind of like sleeping in. Do I really want to wake up every morning at 4 a.m. or whatever your condition is, right? Instead, I found that 21 days, you can really charge at a goal, whatever it is that you're seeking after. And then you can think of 21 days as 3 weeks of a month. And then that fourth week, you rest. And you think about all the things that you accomplished and all the things you didn't accomplish, and then what you're going to do in the next 21 days. So you're taking that week to kind of breathe, recuperate, regenerate, and then charge at the next 21 days. And this has been a godsend because I started this in July, I believe. And I've been doing it every single month, and I've been making progress, taking away chunks at this huge year-long goal. But it's also presented itself, when you charge at a big goal, that's when your limitations come up and they present themselves and they say, here I am. I'm your anger. Welcome, right? Or whatever it is. I'm your defeatism. Let's talk, right? But I also realized that all of your limitations exist, whether you recognize them or not, but it's harder to see them if you're not striving for something in life. Does that make sense? So I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, why do I need God? And I'm like, you don't. If your goal is to not strive for anything, but if you're really pushing yourself beyond what you think is possible, that's when you really need the help of something beyond just you, okay? Because we all have so many limitations. But you can plug yourself into limitless ideas, limitless energy, and all that if you know how, and that's through God, that's through divine. So this thing became a godsend, but it also started to life started throwing all the limitations at me, or I could see them much more clearly. So then, right around that time, I was, my organization, we meet up once every year. And we have these staff meetings, which are like a family discussion. And we always have somebody from the outside to facilitate these discussions. Does anybody know why? Because otherwise we might punch each other, right? Because we're talking about our emotions. Well, and especially if we're all remote workers, so we're not in each other's physical presence, except for sometimes once a year. So stuff kind of festers, even if you don't notice it. But last year we could not find a facilitator. We asked so many people, and after a while we just said, it's meant to be. We're just supposed to facilitate ourselves. Let's figure it out. It was kind of like mom and dad are gone for the weekend. We're going to have to eat somehow. Let's figure this out. So we met up, but before we did, I asked the group, do you guys have any books that you could recommend that we read to help us so that we don't hurt each other? Because we're about to go into some interesting, spicy conversations. And one of my coworkers recommended this book. It's a business book. It has nothing to do with emotions, really, but it has everything to do with emotions. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you are in a family or a church community or a job that involves humans, this doesn't really apply to AI as far as I can tell. But in terms of human interaction, this is one of the best books that I've ever read, and here's why. It's pretty amazing. Let me show you this. I don't know, can you guys see that? So the foundation of all of your results are based on trust, implicit trust that is cultivated and curated and built. So you cannot reach great goals unless you trust each other, because if you're striving for something really big, it's going to involve digging deep and and really figuring things out together. But you cannot have deep conversations unless it sometimes involves some conflict. Yeah? So basically, what this book proposes is that conflict is not only important, it's fundamentally necessary. But that conflict has to be predicated on trust. So if you trust that the other person has a similar goal as you, imagine husband and wife. I just did this, I think, Sunday night with you. I'm talking to my wife, by the way. We had a difficult conversation, and I brought it up, right? Was that Sunday? I don't know, it was last weekend. Let's call it Sunday. Where I had something that if she didn't trust that I loved her, and I brought up this conversation, there probably would have been a stabbing, during that altercation. It would have turned into something. But she ended up thanking me because she trusted that we needed to get past this, right? So we needed the conflict, but it was predicated on us establishing a rapport of trust. Does this make sense? I feel like I'm speaking very pragmatically, but I want to, because this is really important, that conflict is so good. And I grew up in a country where being polite is king. It's like, that's the most important thing in the world. Canada. You can tell? How could you tell? Damn it. I thought I had assimilated better. Every so often, somebody's like, where are you from, stranger? I'm like, I'm here. I'm an American. There's something that haunts me and follows me around. Maybe sincerity, I don't know. Anyway, in Canada, because I've been dealing with people back home and all this, and if you're rude, it's like you've killed somebody. It's like the worst thing. And I think England and Japan, similar, where it's like you are polite first and foremost and last most, right? And conflict in those environments is very tricky because it involves being rude sometimes, or what might be perceived as being rude. But it's only then that you can truly love somebody is by knowing what they really feel. And this is why I think this is so important, because I have so many parents that say, oh, my kids are like this, my kids are like this. And I was like, when was the last time you really just sat and listened to them? When was the last time you let them criticize you without reacting and just took it? Just heard what they had to say. And kids too. I know a lot of kids are like, my parents are so judgmental. They're always like this, 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 and this. And I'm like, sounds very judgmental of you. When was the last time you sat and talked with your parents and just had it out, right? With the implicit desire to establish more love and trust, not just for fighting, So it was so hard for me. When we used to go to meetings, like as a team, I would always fear when I could tell that somebody was about to say something about me. You guys know that feeling? When somebody's about to criticize you and you just feel like, ugh! And it's a feeling of like, I want to run away, but I also want to punch this person. It's like conflicting energies. But this time, for the first time in my life, I was excited about conflict. Because I could understand that if we can, first, we didn't start by just fighting, It wasn't just we didn't walk into a room and there were, boxing gloves waiting for us. It was, we went there and we had some fun first, sang some songs, had some delicious coffee, drinks, whatever. And then we got into it, we talked about some, started out here, and then we got our way into, and this is what I think about you, right? And I was like, yeah, like, let's do this. Because before, just how I've been trained by my culture was my nervous system was trained to fear difficult conversations. But now that I understood the value, I reconditioned myself to now seek after these conversations. Okay? And this has saved my wife and I, our relationship. It's just, let's keep on going, even though this is super uncomfortable. Even though, here's the thing. When a lot of people think that this is the end of a relationship, they're right, but not in the way that they think. It's not the end of the relationship. It's the end of this iteration of the relationship. This is the limits of your love right now within a couple. And in order to break through that and experience a higher love, you're going to have to do some work. And when you pierce through that veil, that just feels like I can't love you anymore. And I've said that to my wife. Like, I physically am out of love to give you right now, but I know that there is more potential somewhere, somehow. Let's just keep on praying. Let's keep on going. And then we graduated from that. But it's not after one conversation. It's after piercing that limitation. Do you guys know what I'm saying? There's a limitation that we have in couples. And when you feel like it's the end, it is. But not the end of that relationship. It's the end of that version. That's like 1.0. To get to 2.0, it takes everything you got to kind of pierce through that veil. And this is what I'm trying to establish between parents and children. This is what High Noon is trying to do. And this is how I try to live my life. But it's not possible without some conflict. But that requires us to do a lot of breathing. Yeah. And preparation and meditation and stuff like that. So, next. I hope I'm speaking English because I just don't know. So this is my theory. This is the best visualization I can conjure right now, is that everybody lives in their own room. This is a metaphysical room that we live in, and some people's rooms are bigger than others, and some people's rooms can't fit anything other than their own cat. And you can feel that because when you talk to them, they're not able to receive anything from you. They can't let you into their heart. They don't want to learn anything from you. They're just kind of closed off. Have you met these people? You can walk around and talking with them is very unsatisfying because you know that you're talking, but they just want to tell you something. They don't want to hear anything. There's nothing give and take. And so it's just very constricting, right? It's like this. You know, if you can imagine, this is a fairly small room, but this is all of your concepts, right? Like if you try to have a conversation, like a philosophical conversation, and somebody's room is very small, they're like, no. And they just don't listen to you, yeah? And it's easy to have a very small room intellectually when it comes to other people. But this is also how many different types of people can fit into your room, you know, this metaphysical room. That means there's certain people, I'm sure, in your life that are not invited into this room, yeah? The door is locked. There's many like locks on the door for that person. They don't know the secret knock. This is your limitation, yeah? And the best thing, what we're trying to do, what I think religion is not meant to be a thing that you join, but it's meant to be like school isn't the end. It's training for something, right? Ideally, to be a healthy, well-adjusted person for society. And that's what religion is too, is to help you expand your room to fit in as much as possible so that you can welcome as many different types of people as possible so that they can feel soulless in your room, yeah? So, I just wanted to get into the 4 types of limitations that I've really identified. I'm sure there's a million more. There's money, there's all sorts of other stuff that I'm not talking about, but I think they can all fit into these 4 things. So the first one is the mind, right? So this is a new concept that I just learned about. I'm pretty sure it's new, but the idea is prompt engineering. This is, I feel like I've talked to David a lot about this because it's exciting to me. But AI, right? So a lot of people are freaking out because nobody knows what to do with this thing. This new like endless sphere of knowledge that is seemingly going to replace everybody's jobs, right? So everybody's like, oh my God, what do we do? It's like there's a giant bullet that just moved into the block and everybody's afraid. But actually what I'm learning is the people who understand how to use this technology, the people who control the machines will control the future, okay? The machines don't control themselves, not yet, and hopefully not ever. But humans are meant to control machines. But the hardest part about controlling machines is asking the right questions. That's what prompt engineering is if you can learn to ask the right questions, you can get technology to do whatever you want, but it's really hard. It's so hard to ask the right questions because you can, now there's, anybody experimented with Midjourney or DALL-E or any of these? Making pictures. Midjourney especially, if you guys ever get a chance, I would really challenge you to go to Midjourney because you can write in a prompt and it can make you any picture of anything in under 60 seconds. So I said, make a picture, because Mongolians love Genghis Khan. So I was like, make a picture of Genghis Khan, hyper realistic with cinematic lighting. And it turned out 4 pictures in 45 seconds of real humans. But they're not real humans, but they are real looking humans. But it just made it, right? And the better you are at asking questions, the more realistic it can make you. But you have to make the description really good. But I realized that this is life itself. A lot of times when we're speaking to our spouse and they're reacting, and like you say something to them and then they freak out, it's because we're asking them in the wrong way. We're prompting them. We're constantly prompting people. And even with God, I feel like the way that we communicate with God, we don't get specific answers to our questions because we're asking our questions the wrong way. They're not specific enough. I think you can be very scientific with the way that your spirit life is that's the only reason why I was able to believe in God in the first place, is by asking specific questions. Say, okay, if you're real, then what's this about? What's this about? And just being revealed answer after answer after, but only after asking specific questions. Does this make sense? So our mind, in order to see your limitations, I feel like we're limited by the questions that we ask. Does that make sense? Our minds are limited only by the questions that we ask, because we'll never get answers unless we can ask the right questions. And that's of people too. If you're stuck in a relationship and things aren't working out, well, what are you asking of each other? What are you expecting of each other? There's so many hidden expectations. You should be like this, but these are all just assumptions. Have you expressed this? Have you learned how to ask well of your spouse, right? In terms of our hearts, here's something that Eugene downstairs came up with. When I put this sticker on there, I was like, nobody will listen to a single word I'm saying because it's so childish and irritating. But I couldn't help myself. Eugene downstairs, who's making us lunch a while ago, maybe like a year ago, told me about this idea of the precursor, the thing that comes before love is curiosity. If you're really curious about somebody, you start to fall in love with them. And the problem is that the limitations of our... Oh, you heard me talking about you. You just appeared on... Give it up for Eugene, everybody! You see? Did you hear me? No, that's crazy. I was just talking about you 2 seconds ago. And then he showed up in an apron looking like you want to fight. Yeah. So I was just talking about you, about how you taught me about this curiosity thing. So this is something that they learned in the Ukraine. And I really loved it because, especially if you've been married for somebody or to somebody for a while, you stop being curious about them. And so you start to have these assumptions. So the more assumptions that you have about somebody, the less newness and curiosity and new emotions that you feel about them. It's kind of like stale. But it's not the fact that you're stale. It's just that you're not curious enough about each other. So I'm trying to really ask as many people as possible in terms of if they're struggling in their marriage or if they're struggling with their kids, like to talk, to be more curious about them and to find out about them. And this is again, a limitation of our heart is like, can you be curious about somebody that you're fighting with? Because all you want to do is formulate an assumption as to why they're wrong. Because you know. But that's our ego speaking, not our soul. Our soul seeks newness, expansion. We're a part of an expansive universe, and our love is a part of that, right? So to be perpetually curious puts you in the position of a child. And that, Jesus said very clearly, that's how you get into the kingdom, is by having the heart of a child. So curiosity is such a good measure, because it's like, do I love somebody or not? Well, that's very ethereal and very vague. But if you can ask yourself, how curious am I about this person? And that's a great kind of lead in to how much love am I feeling for this person, okay? So again, the limitation of our hearts is kind of like the limitation of our curiosity for that person. Next is body. That's me. That's my... I made a GIF of me at home. So our bodies, I heard this a while ago and I really love it. You don't stop moving when you get old. You get old when you stop moving. But if you apply this to your heart, if you apply this to your spirit, if you apply this to your body, all things, we're meant to constantly grow and expand. Okay? But I wanted to go back and talk about stress inoculation for a bit, because I think that this is, hey buddy. Sorry, my son just walked in the room. Have you guys ever heard of stress inoculation before? It's like a vaccine is meant to introduce disease into you so that your body learns how to fight it off. So when the real thing comes, you're ready. Same thing with stress. And this is what cold showers. I did cold showers for 12 years straight. And then I stopped. I took a year off. And then they became very fashionable now with Wim Hof and the internet and all that. So I was like, hey, I used to do that. So now I got back into it hard. And that's exactly it. Is they've proven now that when you're in a very kind of enclosed environment where you're controlling it, to put yourself in a position to pour cold water on yourself is very stressful. But if you can learn how to handle that well, it actually increases your ability to handle stress that you didn't control. Like when somebody, cuts you off and this kind of stuff. In real life, you're less likely to freak out and to get stressed at your kids and all that. So there's all these things like meditation is very stressful because you have to just sit there. And you don't want to sit there. You don't want to move. You want to check your phone for the trillionth time. Even though there's no pings or anything. You just want to do that thing. Or you want to let your mind wander, but to focus is actually stressful. But if you can kind of cope with that, what you're doing is you're creating what's called mind-body unity. This allows you the freedom to actually control your body. Does this make sense? And physically, I think this is really important to learn how to exercise when you don't want to exercise. And find an exercise regimen and to eat the foods that your body needs. Things like cold showers, fasting, these were just crazy religious things that crazy religious people did for thousands of years. And now, atheists in Silicon Valley are all about it, right? Everybody's talking about intermittent fasting. Everybody's talking about meditation. Everybody's talking about cold showers. Because they're actually extremely efficient for helping you to be a productive person. Okay. So limitations of the body, I would say, are when you listen to your body in terms of its limitations, then you start to limit your life. But when you start to understand what your limitations are and you push your body in a healthy way beyond those, then you can kind of dominate your body. Come on, buddy. We're almost done. So spirit. I could not find anything for spirit. Look at that ridiculous sun drinking a coffee was the best thing I could honestly find. I wanted to just define a little bit what I think in terms of limitations. Your ability to perpetually expand your capacity to make this world a reflection of your best self. Let me just unpack that. Hey, buddy, I'm talking. If you're anybody else's kid, I wouldn't say anything, but you're my kid. So you got to be quiet. Otherwise, you're coming home with somebody else. That's my limitation right now. Yeah, but why? You're talking when I'm talking. I'm going to destroy you. Okay. So to expand yourself and your capacity based on your best self, okay? A lot of people, when we're in a low spiritual state, we want everybody to conform to our limitations. Why aren't they more like me? When we're in a high spiritual state, we want to love them more and help raise them up, right? And so the limitations of our spirit, because you can get into a million different things when you talk about spirituality. You can talk about shopping at Whole Foods more often, Not really, but that's, you know what I'm saying. But I wanted to define it in a very practical way that the extent to which you're able to really connect with your highest potential, that means that you've already done the first blessing. And now you've really invested in your family and they're super healthy. Then now you're expanding that and you're impacting the world around you. You're expanding your capacity as a human to influence the environment around you. It's really hard to do, okay? But our limitations, again, want us to, I've seen this because we've traveled a lot. When you go somewhere, you're like, I've heard so many Americans land in Thailand or something where's McDonald's? That's ridiculous. Go there and learn to love the people and their food, Instead of trying to make, anyway, I'm going to shut up. You saw, I was about to go off. So lastly, I know this is I feel like this has been very dry, but I can't express to you how important this practical skill is to learn how to love your limitations and form a healthy relationship with them. That doesn't mean just fully accept them, and it also means to not fully deny them. It's to identify them. And you can't work on them all at once. You have to choose your battles and work on them to the extent that you can, right? Because you'll notice, based on this rubric, there's certain people in my life that I won't let into my heart. That's a limitation. If every time you think of somebody, you're irritated by them or you judge them, that's your limitation. Okay? If you haven't learned something really new that excites you in a while, that's your mental limitation. Yeah? If you haven't gone out and done something that's really scary for a while, that's a spiritual limitation. Yeah? Do you guys understand this? And when you really, and we were talking about this, it is true that a lot of people like to say there are no limitations, and there's no natural limitations. They're all just within us. There's stuff that we inherited, stuff that we've grown up in our culture, whatever, but you can break through all of these limitations. But the most important ones that I would love for you to understand how to break through are the ones in your family. Because those are the ones that come to me and ask for help. And there's too many people that feel isolated in this world, and it's wreaking havoc on our culture. Is that we have billions of people in this world, and many of them feel like they're all alone. And it's crazy because statistically, the more you're in a condensed, concentrated area, like a city, the more people are isolated, okay? And it's just that people don't really have the mechanics to learn how to identify the limitations that they have in their relationships and break through those and invite old enemies into your world again and start loving them again. Inviting strangers, new kind of people that you don't normally hang out with into your life. This just creates a very rich and exciting life. And a lot of people are weirded out by why my wife and I travel. And we can't really explain it other than the fact that we feel called to get really uncomfortable every once in a while. Because traveling for us isn't we're not on yachts. We're usually, mixing it up with some very unusual people that we'd never talk to, and we learn to love them, We made best friends with Komang, our gardener, and anyway, we love, but we wouldn't naturally. So we go there to throw ourselves and to show, as soon as you land in a new place, you're completely your limitations are I don't know where I am. This place smells weird. Am I going to get a disease? In some of these countries, where did this come from? On the plane, I was fine. As soon as I come out, you're where's this pythons? I'm always worried about a snake eating my child. Even in countries without snakes, this is my limitation, right? And my dad, when we were in Bali, we had chickens. My wife just went out and got chickens one day. We didn't have a farm. We had a house. And they were walking through our kitchen, and my dad's limitation was, he was like, they're going to give us salmonella. So he started chasing them with a broom. So that was his limitation. So that was kind of random. I'm sorry. The main point is, let me summarize, and I'm done. If we could identify our limitations and then talk about them, that creates conflict in us because our ego we want to say that we can figure it out by ourselves. Every single person that I've talked to that has an addiction, we deal with sexual addictions, especially pornography, things like this, but it manifests in many different ways. They always try to deal with it by themselves. And the conflict, by talking about your limitations with other people, the people in your life, it really hurts your ego, but it really helps your soul. And it liberates you, because the last thing I want to say is our limitations are like this giant bag that we're carrying, and every limitation that we pile into that slows us down, and it causes us to lose momentum and lose like the hope that we're going to get to that happy place. And by talking about our limitations and liberating them, we loosen that grip on that bag, and all of a sudden we start to be able to get through life a lot easier, okay? Sorry, I had to picture that. I had to close my eyes. So the more difficult conversations that you can have and talk about your limitations of other people that you're struggling with things that you think about yourself, all this stuff, it will liberate you in the end. But your ego will do everything in its power to stop you from having these conversations. So I can say that after talking to thousands of people and seeing the two options of like not talking about it and talking about it, the talking about it is the quickest path to freedom, okay? Between husband and wife, between yourself and yourself, between you and God, talking about it. Like a lot of people, they're like, I'm struggling with my faith. Fantastic. That means you're at your limits. Doesn't mean that you have to throw it away or accept it. It means you're at the wall. Break through that wall, and there's so much wealth on the other side of that. But if we create a culture, and honestly, like our international movement's kind of like, don't talk about your doubts. That's no good. Talk about your doubts. Wrestle with them, right? I'll shut up. Do you want me to pray? Thank you. Sorry about that. I feel like, anyway, we'll talk about it after. Heavenly Parent, good God, we have societally, I can see very clearly that our culture, our entire world is trying to break through the limiting beliefs, the limiting emotions of our past. And there's two worlds fighting. There's a world of people that are trying to retain the old world, which means that somebody wins and somebody loses. This is the old way of making money, the old way of dominating one country to another. It's the old way of scarcity. But we know that there's another world that's trying to emerge, but it's trying to emerge through each and every one of us. And that world is one where the limitations are completely removed by us. We have these limitations. They're our responsibility to completely knock down the walls in our minds, in our hearts, in our bodies, in our spirits. And I really pray that we can take up that challenge because it's so exciting. Not only that, it creates this freshness and it creates this momentum in our life and in our culture. So I pray that we can be a people that can talk about all things, the good things and the bad things. We can celebrate together. We can commiserate together. We can fight together. And then we can trust each other enough to really be ourselves all the time and to never wear masks, to only truly be living in the high noon, which really means to be in your light and love and to never shy away from our fears and our greatness. So Heavenly Parent, this has been something that I've been feeling for a long time. I pray that people can get it. I felt like I was speaking Mandarin. I'm sorry, Heavenly Parent. But let's have a great day. And thank you so much for waking up, for allowing us to wake up and be together today. And I offer you this prayer in everybody's name here. And I report this prayer in the Love Family name. Amen and Ajol. Thank you, guys. Justino, if you have any questions, please talk to me because I feel like I didn't convey myself, but